Hi, I'm Joe Dalton and welcome to Breakthrough Brands, the show that tells how Ireland's entrepreneurial DNA is rebooting the country one successful startup at a time. In this series, we'll demystify the process of starting up your own enterprise and growing it into a successful business by sharing the inspirational, educational, real-life experience of ordinary Irish business people. We talk to entrepreneurs who have taken control of their own destiny by doing what they love.
On today's show, we have Dov Baron. Dov Baron has been speaking internationally for over 30 years. He's the man with the finger on the pulse of the evolving world of NextGen leadership. One of Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers to hire, Dov Baron is a master storyteller, considered by many as the leading authority on authentic leadership and the founder of Full Monty Leadership and the authentic speaker of Academy for Leadership. Outside of his speaking and training, Dov works with multi-disciplinary leaders and executive teams to build the bonds that create organisational cultures that become fiercely loyal. Dov is a best-selling author of several books. His latest book is Fiercely Loyal: How High-Performing Companies Develop and Retain Top Talent. He also writes for and has been featured in many industry magazines, including being featured on CNN, CBS Small Business Pulse, SHRM, Yahoo Finance, Boston Globe, Business in Vancouver, US Today, CEO, Entrepreneur, and many more.
Hi Dov, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I tell you, Manchester, isn't it, where you're originally from?
Yes, that's the place I escaped from 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
Dov, tell us your story. Tell me how you ended up where you are now. In 5 minutes.
I was going to say, do you have a week?
Give me a synopsis.
So as you said, I was actually born in Salford, which is part of Manchester, in something that people who are local will understand is, it was pretty much a extreme poverty and ghetto environment, a lot of crime, violence, and addiction around me, and never felt like I fitted in. Not that I was better, just that I was different.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I think I was about 7, my mom was pretty freaked out because I would ask things that kids my age didn't ask and talked about things that other kids didn't talk about. And my mom shipped me off to the rabbis because she figured I might be possessed or something. And this was in the days before the horror movies about those kinds of things. So yeah. I began going to these rabbis and started being introduced to Kabbalah and started to study that as a little child. By the time I was 11, I was introduced to prana yoga, which is yoga of breath.
Yeah.
Started my own business, started an apprenticeship at 13, completed a 4-year apprenticeship in 10 months. Went from there to starting my own business at 16 and began to travel the world to study metaphysical studies. So studied Kabbalah, Gnostic Christianity, Vedanta, which is Hindu philosophy, Buddhism, and the Tao.
Yeah.
Along with running businesses and studying psychology, studied family psychology, family dynamic psychology, psychology of excellence, which is leadership. And then in 1984, sort of stumbled into quantum physics and went, now it all makes sense. And started studying quantum physics, put the 3 of them together, wrote a dissertation on the intersection between quantum physics, metaphysics, and psychology and how they play out together. Began speaking on that, not by choice, but by request, and didn't even have any desire to speak, in 84. And that was the beginning of my speaking career, which went down like a lead balloon. It was pretty devastating, got financially crushed in the process, came back, made some money, started speaking again, did very well, got to the top of my game,
and
then crashed again in a completely different way, in a physical way, in 1990, and then came back again and really had to reevaluate who I was and what I was and why I was doing what I was doing. So that's the Reader's
journey.
Digest version of the story.
It's an interesting story because what happened was I'm only gathering that you had a moment of clarity along the way, and in that moment you kind of went, "Hey, I've nothing to lose here. Follow my gut."
Yeah, it's of course it's a lot more dramatic than that. As I said, in 1990, the stop was that I was an adrenaline junkie. I was having more success than I'd ever had before, and my life was sort of feeling like it was at the top of its game. And being an adrenaline junkie, I was doing all kinds of stupid things on a regular basis. And I was free climbing up by Whistler, which some people will know because of the Winter Olympics. And I was free climbing by this beautiful waterfall, and about 120 feet, I reached for a rock. That rock dislodged and released a bigger rock that hit me in the face and sent me hurtling down to the bottom. Lovely. From about 12 stories up.
My God.
And I landed on my face on boulders and just smashed me to complete pieces. And, I can tell you that it was extremely painful. I can tell you about the recovery and how brutal it was. And it was, no denying any of that. But what I should tell you is that being a lad from Salford who had been into leadership, so I'd come up through the ghetto, I'd gone into leadership, I'd ran my own thing for most of my life. Nothing was going to get me down, and I began to tell everybody that. So when people would ask me, "How you doing?" I'm great. I'm coming back. And about 9 months into the recovery, I realized that there is no back. And I came home one night, and like I said, 9 months in, I'm starting to look better. I'm starting to feel better. And I really had been a miserable bastard for a long time after the fall. But at that point, coming back, I'd had this night out with my mate, and it had been a good night, and it felt good. The first time I'd really enjoyed a night out. Yeah. And I came home, and my kitchen was festooned with garbage. It wasn't like that when I went out, and I was so pissed off because this cat that I had, a cat I did not like, that an ex-girlfriend had given me, a Siamese cat that was like having a small child because it would wake you in the night going, "Oh!"
I'm having that moment at the moment.
Did not like this cat at all.
Yeah.
And then it's made this bloody big mess in my kitchen and ruined my good night. So I walk in the living room to find this cat and, scream at it or whatever. And the cat is on the couch curled up in a little ball looking all kinds of comfy. And I pull my hand up to push it off the couch. And as I do, I touch it. And I realize it's cold. And I pick the cat up, and the cat is actually dead.
Okay.
And I pulled it in my arms, and I fell on the floor devastated, and I began to weep.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm weeping, holding a cat I don't like, who's just made a mess in my house. The cat has kept me awake, so clearly I'm not crying for the cat. And it took me a couple of minutes to get that, and it was that point that when I realized this is where it all ends. This is where it has to change. See, people will ask me, well, that fall must have changed your life. No, it didn't. It didn't change my life at all. It did in a physical sense, but psychologically, I was still playing the same game. Yeah, you were. But it took 9 months. Interesting gestation period. It took 9 months for the truth of it to gestate, and for me to get in touch with my own heart and soul, and really ask myself, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing this?
Do you reckon
that was the real recovery? That next 9 months.
Do you reckon that was the reason? That was your ego pushing at you, going, "I'm great, I'm wonderful, I've come from a poor background, and look at me, I'm a rock star." And you're at that moment. Did you kind of go, your ego? You realised, look, let my ego go, let everything fall apart, and I can rebuild from there.
It'd be nice if it was that simple. Yeah. Unfortunately, it isn't that simple. So certainly my ego was running the show before I fell. And it never felt like a rock star in that sense. I mean, I felt like a rock star in my own life compared to where I'd come from. But, I didn't sort of put that out into the world. But I felt there was definitely my ego was running the show. I was doing it for two main reasons, which was the applause and the people I could fix, and there's nobody to fix. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. I thought people were broken and they needed me to fix them, which was echoes from my childhood. And it was at that moment when I realized I can't fix anybody, and I got to look at me. And it was there that I went, oh, okay, this is about me. It's about what I've got to look at. And it's not as simple as, well, I've got nothing to lose. The ego holds on with every last fiber. And it felt like, I've battled with my ego for the next 9 months, even after that realization, because, it wanted to get back. It wanted to go back to what we'd known, and I just couldn't do it. But the temptation was massive to just go, yeah, I can get back on the same path. And I think that since that day is a battle. I mean, I think it's something that I face on a regular basis is the desire to play the old game. And then the reminder to come back to my own heart and my own soul and why I'm here to serve and who I serve.
I read Lisa Nichols' book, The Abundance Now, and that gave me a moment of clarity, which my story was, wanting to be the ego and the power. And it made me realise when I had hit rock bottom that I, for myself, had to turn around and say, I give myself permission to be successful, because it wasn't a fear of failure, because I've had successful business and it was getting to that next level. So I know that the story you're telling, I can relate to it very well, Dov. It's a journey that we go on, and it's wisdom that we pick up along the way, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the mistakes we make. I have been a collector of information. I have been, and I think we live in a society that's very much that way right now. The information age, we're downloading information at an extreme rate. I mean, you have to realize that by 2003, all the knowledge in the world, every piece of knowledge from the beginning of time to 2003, we double that every 2 years.
Yeah, it's a busy space.
Right. So we are addicts for information, but information and knowledge are not wisdom. Wisdom is the discernment to know when and how to apply that. Yeah. And to have compassion in delivering it. I mean, I know that in those early years, part of where my ego had a big foothold was in the desire to be right. So I would tell people all this knowledge that I had, and I would withhold and hoard certain information because it made me smarter or better. But that was all ego. Yeah. As opposed to serving.
I would say to clients, if they're going into a meeting, I said to leave your ego at the door and have empathy when you're going in there, and you'll be more successful.
Yeah, and I agree with you fully. But again, I want to caution people: leave your ego at the door is a nice statement. Yeah, but it's not easily done. No. So have you seen the movie Revolver?
No.
Guy Ritchie movie?
No, let me write that down.
I want to talk about ego. That's a great film. It's probably the best movie to understand it, because there's a scene in the movie. Jason Statham plays the lead role, and so you think it's going to be this action hero movie, and it kind of is, but it isn't, and it's brilliantly done. But there's at one point where he's battling with his own ego, and at one point he's in an elevator screaming at his own ego, and his ego's screaming back. It's brilliantly done. And then he loses it, and he goes, just get away from me. And it goes quiet. And there's this moment you think, oh my God, he's finally got rid of his ego. He's finally killed it off. And about 2 seconds later, you hear the ego go, ha! Yeah. You thought I was gone, didn't you? That's how it is. So you think you leave your ego at the door, but what you don't know is it's snuck in your pocket. And as soon as somebody pushes a certain button, it's going to come back. So leave your ego at the door is a nice idea, but what you've actually got to do is you've got to constantly check your ego, constantly take it out. And as I say, it's been driving the bus for years. It determines where you're going, and you've got to at least move it into the navigation seat so that it can give you some direction should you need it. But usually for most of us, it's too loud and too big to do that. So you've got to kind of lock it in the trunk for a couple of weeks. You've got to put it in the boot of the car for a couple of weeks and then let it out sporadically and say, this is your job. Because here's the thing, your ego is not bad. Your ego is, if you've met anybody on the planet, it doesn't take much to realize every single person got an ego. It doesn't matter whether you're Dalai Lama or whether you're Joe Dalton. It doesn't matter who you are. or Dov Baron. We all get egos. The thing is, your ego is there to protect you. It's there to keep you safe. But the problem is how it assesses danger. So it assesses everything as the saber-toothed tiger. And what you have to do is to quell it a little bit by going, this is okay. I can do this. I can breathe. Thank you for the input. I know it would be safer for us to go the same old route, but we're just going to take a step into the other direction. Well, so one of the things with my ego, it's interesting because of what you spoke about, Joseph. Yeah. One of the things I have to do with my ego is train my ego that it's okay for me to be excited.
Yes.
Because my ego says if you get excited, you're going to get disappointed.
Yeah,
it's going to hurt, and I don't want you to hurt. I want to keep you safe. So I have to train my ego. And so, my wife has she gave me this wonderful gift of this statement, which is, I'm willing to risk being excited in order to have what I want.
That's interesting, actually. It's and because I do believe that we all need an ego. I do say leave it at the door, but I think your ego helps you drive. And if you train it to use it as an advantage, it can get you places. And I think if by locking it in the trunk, it probably helps you. Well, it's helped me be more self-aware.
Yeah, and you just you can still hit that way. If it's in the boot of the car, if it's in the trunk of the car, you can still hear its muffles. It's not gone away.
It's
but
like
one of the things that as you know, I work with Fortune 500 companies. I work with leaders from around the world who are entrepreneurs and all the rest of it, and very successful C-suite and family businesses, all those different categories. And the thing that I say constantly is we've all got the ego. It's okay. Don't make the ego the enemy. It's the modern day version of the devil. I mean, when we were kids, people used to say, "Oh, the devil made me do it." No, the devil didn't make you do it.
You did.
And now people say, "Well, my ego made me do it." No, the ego didn't make you do it. The ego's just doing its job. Yeah. That's all it is. So don't make it bad. It's just trying to keep you alive. And instead, just go, okay, I need it. It's one of the things that will drive me. It will give me, if you're an A-type personality, and I work with these people, as I said, and they are that. I don't want to get rid of their ego. I want them to run it as opposed to having it run them.
Yeah, use it as an advantage. That's
right.
Yeah, definitely. And the Academy of Leadership then, how did all this evolve into that?
Yeah, that is a story in and of itself. Well, as I said, I started out speaking in '84. Yeah. And if we have a moment, I'll tell you exactly how that started.
We've a bit of time. Don't worry.
All right. So, as I said, I started out. I did an apprenticeship when I was a kid, 13 years old. I lied about my age and went into a full-time apprenticeship and finished the apprenticeship in a 4-year apprenticeship in 10 months and started my own business. Now, the businesses that I owned were hair salons. I ran and owned hair salons, and so I did that I was in that world for 13 years. I owned a very successful salon in Australia.
I noticed that with your hair.
I ran and owned salons in Britain, in Canada, and in Australia. And one of my customers, I had a side business which today would be called branding, but it wasn't called that in those days. It was called image consulting. And so one of my clients who would come in owned a national menswear company. And we would have these phenomenal conversations about metaphysical studies, philosophy, psychology, quantum physics. And, we just had these great convos. I loved him coming in and we'd have these great convos. And one day he said to me, "I'd like you to come and speak to my national managers." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we have this big boardroom. They come in. It's all the top managers from around the country, from Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, wherever. And we all come in and we meet together." And I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, "I want you to speak for them." I'm like, "About what?" And he goes, "Anything you want." And I'm like, "Anything I want? What do you? I don't understand." And he says, "Just have one of the conversations we have." And I said, "Okay."
Can I talk about that?
I don't think so. I'm not a speaker. and so he kept conning me, and then he says eventually he says, "Just do it." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it. How long for?" And he goes, "About an hour." I'm like, "Whoa, dude, I can't talk for an hour." Now it's a warm up, but then in those days that was pretty freaky. Anyway, we finally agreed upon a half an hour. He told me where to go and when to get there and all the rest of it, and I did. And as instructed, when I got there, I put my head in the door, and so that everybody could see me, so that all of his team could see me, which I was instructed to do. Now, you think about this long boardroom in the early 1980s. They're all in their suits and their ties, and they're buttoned up, and they're all, because they're running National Menswear Company, they're in their suits.
Okay.
And they all look very tight, and they're looking at me, and they're giving me the what we used to call in Salford the fuck off nod.
Yeah.
Which is this head nod to the side, which is get out of here. You're in the wrong place.
Who are you?
Right. And here's why. You see, when he asked me to come speak, what he said is, I want you to come just the way you are today. Now, this is, again, I'm in my early 20s at that point in time.
Yeah.
And the way I had originally met him was he used to make my suits. I loved suits, and he'd make these suits for me, beautiful suits. But when I wasn't in those suits, I'd be wearing alternative clothing. And being 23 years old, and I've been a bodybuilder since I was 19. Being young and having a fair amount of ego at that point, I needed to show off that physique. So I would wear T-shirts.
I'm picturing it now.
Yeah, T-shirts that were too tight.
Yeah.
Skin-tight jeans with holes in the knees, which are back in fashion. And my hair was chest length, and it looked like Howard Stern's did in the 80s. So that ringlet Louis XIII hair.
Lovely.
That's what my hair was like. Designer stubble, and earrings that were so big you could hang parrots off them.
And you're sitting down, you're up there to talk to these people who are running businesses.
So I'm sticking my head in the door, and that's the way I look.
Beautiful.
Now, you should know, he made my suits. I had suits, but he had insisted that I did not wear a suit. He wanted me to come looking like that. And he's a very smart guy, and I didn't realize why he was doing that until I got in that room. So I'm in the room, I put my head in, he finishes speaking, and he says, let me introduce you to our speaker, and he calls me up, and you can hear the clunk as jaws hit the desk.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh my God, what's this idiot got to say? And it, like I said, early 80s, a lot of conversation about the Aboriginal communities of Australia and how poorly they'd been treated. And I will tell you, I don't remember what I said at that presentation. I only remember my opening, and I know I didn't have anything planned. I know that for sure. And I walked up and stood there at the end of the table. Steve walked to the other end so I could see him, but nobody else could see him. And I said, put your hand up if you're a racist. Well, of course, nobody's going to put their hand up.
Okay.
And they're sort of looking at me, and then I said, put your hand up if you would judge somebody by the way they look or the color of their skin or their financial situation. And again, nobody puts their hand up. And I said, you're a bunch of freaking liars. Every single one of you judged me based on how I look. Every one of you decided on my financial situation and my intelligence level based on how I look. But here's what you don't know. I met Steve because I am a customer. And if I'd have walked into your establishment looking the way I look today, which is how Steve asked me to come, you would have missed out on a really good customer. And I look back at Steve, and I think at that point, I'm dead in the water because I've probably, stepped over my mark. And Steve looks, and he looks like somebody sliced his face open because his smile is from ear to ear. I mean, obviously he understood what he was doing. I did not. Yeah. And it really hit home the point. Now, if the story ended there, that would make me the hero. But I wasn't a hero. Steve was the hero. Because I finished that presentation, rousing round of applause, very nice. Steve complimented me a lot on it, said it was great. And about 2 weeks later, Steve came to me and he said, yeah, this other guy wants you to come speak for his company. I was like, oh, great. Now I'm excited. Great. That's fabulous. So what do? I've got probably about a week before I get through this, and I begin to do research, and I start looking at the Zig Ziglars of the world and the Jim Rohns of the world and the Dennis Waitleys of the world. And for those of you who are older, will know who those guys are. If you're younger, you probably don't. But those were the top speakers at that time. And what I noticed about them was, A, they were all old. as in much older than I was, as I was 23, they all wore blue suits, white shirts, and red ties. That was the uniform. So what did I do? I cut off my hair. I bought myself a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, shaved my designer stubble, grew this ugly-ass caterpillar version of a mustache,
the politician
and went on stage
suit,
and died. What made me successful in the first presentation was authenticity.
Yeah.
And that was the very thing I gave away. And people go, well, I guess you learned your lesson, right? Oh yeah, I learned my lesson. It took me about 3-4 years before I actually got, that was what worked. It was being me.
Being natural.
Being natural. So at the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership, what we do is we show you the formula and show you how to tap that formula, but in making it about you. So when we're working with leaders who are CEOs or entrepreneurs, and we say, listen, the number one form of marketing that works is personal contact, and not about you vomiting your stuff over people, but letting them know your story, letting them in. And how you do that is learning how to present in a way that is totally and absolutely authentic to you. So that was the beginning of that.
And it has evolved from there. It's
evolved from that to have me speaking all over the world, as you know.
Yeah.
Places like the UN and Iran. And,
you've been to, like it, as people would have heard in the beginning on the bio. I applaud you. Tell me this: Millennials, leadership. Let it roll.
Yep. Well, a lot of people my age, I'm a baby boomer, young baby boomer, but I'm a baby boomer. A lot of people my age have got a lot of problems with millennials. And as you know, the last book I wrote, Fiercely Loyal, was about how to lead millennials and keep them, because leaders are struggling with them because they stay in a job. An average time in a job is 1.2 to 2 years.
Yeah.
1.2 to 2 years is a very short period of time when you think about the ROI. The money you spend on them in training and development is 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary. So there's a good chance they leave you before you've got any ROI. So every employee is costing you money, and your top 40% of people that you have in positions today who are millennials are already thinking about leaving you. So naturally, Gen Xers and baby boomers who are leading these folks are pissed off at them and feel like, they're flighty and they're not loyal. And it's not true. And we think they're entitled. It's not true. If you look through red lenses, everything looks red. And that's the problem. We're looking at millennials through baby boomer lenses. What we have to do is look at millennials through millennial lenses, when we see that they are amazing. They are the greatest gift to business. You see, when I entered the workforce, I was asked, what do you want to do, as probably you were? And that was a 20 to 40 year decision. I'm going to go into business, or I'm going to go into this, and we thought about that as a career for the next 20 to 40 years. Millennials look at careers as being 4 years. Careers, not jobs.
Yeah.
4 years. So they're going to change careers every 4 years. So if you can keep them for an entire career cycle, that's fantastic.
I must be a millennium.
They're going to put a ton of value into you. And that's wonderful. They're looking to change jobs more often. Now, here's the thing, why I love millennials, is millennials are baby boomers with balls. When I entered the workforce, I was, like I said, I was a young baby boomer, but the baby boomers who were 10 years older than me were hippies, and they were all not going to work for the men. And today, they are the men. Millennials, on the other hand, have worked it out that their best option is not the job. They don't trust that. They understand, and they have this wonderful thing called the internet. So they can start a business for $20. They can buy a URL, buy a website, put it up. They could probably know enough code to put it up themselves, and they can start a business. So they're not dependent upon us, and that means we have to treat them better. We have to involve them more. We have to look to them for what it is that they can teach us. Part of our arrogance and our ego as leaders is that we're going to teach them. No. Those rules have changed. Mentorship is not from the top down. Mentorship is from the top down, from the bottom up, and from side to side.
I will
We
tell
have
you,
to be able to learn from them.
this show was sponsored by Harris Myers, your sales and marketing agency, helping you develop a better sales and marketing pipeline. Let me just tell you what's happening over here. We understand that at the moment, and a lot of the companies here now, they're creating a wellness lifestyle within the businesses. They're offering they're looking at ways that they can help the millennials to stay in their business. So they're offering them, there's wellness classes, nutrition, they're getting in, there's meditation happening, there's a lot going on to try and keep them in that business for longer than the 1 year and get them there for the 4. But one of the things that we get, or I hear a lot of, is, okay, this is happening, but they won't answer the phone. They've lost the way of communicating. They don't talk on the phone. Everything is through text. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Well, I want you to just get in a time machine with me and go back 100 years and talk to the leaders of the day who are pissed off that people won't use the telegraph.
Yes, yeah.
It's a stupid argument.
The
You're
fax
arguing
machine.
with technology. You can't argue with technology. That's not smart. What you have to understand is that, yes, they will talk to you, but they're not likely to use a phone. They're probably going to ignore the phone, but they will respond to a text. And if you don't want to do text because they don't do email very well, what I suggest, and this is what we suggest to them, eyeball to eyeball. They're okay with that. They like it. And if your people are non-local, which in a lot of companies they're not, then you meet over Skype or something similar. You meet over some web device that allows for eye contact. My entire team, all but one person, do not work here. Do not work in my office. They're all over. They're all over the world. I've got people working for me in Portugal, in India, in a lot in the US. They don't work here. They're not in Canada where I live. And that's okay. And if I put emails to them, and by the way, I'll tell you what, when I do an email, most of what I want to say is in the subject line. Because I know even now, I'm 59 years old, and what I know is that I'm bombarded with emails, and what I probably am going to read is the very first line, and I miss a lot of the other information. So it's better for you to send me 3 emails with 3 subject lines.
It's the subject line. What I tell people, it's a subject line, it's the first line of the paragraph and the PS at the bottom.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the scan.
Yeah, that's.
And by the way, just as a little tip for everybody, you're going to put a PS at the bottom, bold PS.
Yeah.
Just bold that, because as I scan through, my eye will stop on the bold, I'll read that line and go, okay.
Where's the business happening? Where like, you're doing a lot of talks, you're in a lot of companies. Is it an online then training program that you're offering, or is it one-to-one, or are you just going in and doing events? So
I speak at conferences, as you know, later this year I'll be speaking at the Servant Leader International Conference in San Diego. I'll be speaking for the U.S. military in the beginning of the year coming up. So I, of course, fly in and speak in conferences. I've, as you said, I've spoken in the UK and Australia and everywhere, all over the place. So I fly in to speak at those places, but I also work with companies and their executive boards and their C-suite to help them develop a purpose. Because if you want to get millennials to stick, millennials' number one thing on their list is to do meaningful work. They can't do meaningful work in a company they don't feel bonded to, whose purpose doesn't matter.
They want to make a difference.
They want to make a difference. So your company has to know the purpose.
Yeah.
And that's beyond the finances. And so oftentimes a company will say, "Oh, we've got a purpose." And I said, "What is it?" No, what it is it's the mission statement with a lick of paint. That's not a purpose. A purpose is something there's an emotional bond to. So we work with the companies developing that, bringing that up, and then we work with the leaders inside of those companies. And of course, I also work with leaders in other areas, like I said, high-level entrepreneurs, individuals, and I've worked with athletes and worked with people in the music industry and in the movie industry as well. So that's one-on-one. And when I'm doing the one-on-one, oftentimes that's in person, but oftentimes a lot of my work is done internationally, just like we're speaking right now. I use the devices to speak with my clients who are all over the world. Yeah. Right after this interview, I'll be on with one of my clients who lives on the opposite coast to where I live.
I deal with a lot of companies in Ireland and England and the US, and if it wasn't for Skype, I'd be screwed, really, truly.
Sure. It's wonderful. I love the fact that we can do this.
Do you know the other thing? It's I would contact a lot of millennials through WhatsApp, and from a sales point of view, where a lot of people are saying, okay, these people won't answer the phone, they don't read emails, I'm trying to sell to these people and businesses. How do I do that then? You do it on relationship. Yeah. You have to start a relationship with them, but you can't start a relationship based on, look at what I want to sell you. Yeah. I mean, and the analogy I give to people, I mean, I hate networking. I hate going to those networking things. I think they're a pain in the ass. And most people I know don't like them. Yeah, the coffee's always rubbish.
And the reason you don't like them is because when you go in, it feels like somebody's going to shove a card at you and say, come buy something from me. And we all know that doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work times 100 with millennials. You have to start relationship. And how do you start relationship? By coming to the purpose. If you come to the purpose, let's take a look for a moment. Let's just step back a minute and look at Zappo.com. Right?
Yeah.
Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh had an online shoe company, which he didn't want to get involved in because he said nobody will ever buy this. Women like to try on shoes. But what he did was he built a company around service, and he built a culture around people having fun at work. Not about the foosball machine or any of those things, but like making your space your own and interacting. There's relationship there. Everybody who's there is in relationship. What do we know about that? Here, just as a sidebar, people stay in jobs longer where they're friends with their coworkers. But our idea, my generation's idea, was keep your head down, do the work, don't talk to anybody. But if I don't talk to anybody, then I just can't wait to get the hell out of there and go somewhere else. But if I've got my friend there and I have a little chat with them 2-3 times a day, then I want to be there because this is also my social environment. And this is one of the big distinctions with millennials. They understand that this crazy ass idea that baby boomers and Gen Xers got about work-life balance is a big fat lie. It doesn't work. There's no such thing. Millennials get that. They want balance, but they don't want work-life balance because they know it doesn't exist. So what that means is they want to be at work loving what they're doing. They want to be at work with their friends. They want to be they want to work when it suits them. So, I had this conversation with a CEO yesterday, and the founder of the company wants to fire people who are more efficient in 4 hours than the people who stick there and sit around for 9 hours but waste time. And he'll fire the person who's there for 3, 4, 5 hours working really well, because in his mindset, because he's the founder is in his 70s, it's a person has value by the amount of time they put in. No, they don't. They have value by what it is they produce, what it is the results they bring.
I could never understand when I was an employee and I would be working in a company and I'd have all my work done by 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and I go, why do I have to hang on here till 5:30 when all my work is done for the day? And I'm done now. I'm tired. I'm going, and I made that decision to go. And I was getting more work done. It was under my own time. And then, I realised I like being self-employed. I like doing my own thing. I like my own time with my family. So I know that I'm in my late 40s, but I usually tell everyone in my young 40s. But I think of a touch of millennium in me as well.
The thing about that, just to help you out with that, Joe, is that by age, I'm a baby boomer. By the grey in my hair, I'm a baby boomer.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I'm a millennial. I mean, I was interviewed a long time ago, just after I wrote the book, and they said, well, the baby boomers, because I do a lot of, like I said, multi-generational family stuff, and I do a lot of really translation of baby boomer to millennial, or Gen Xer to millennial, or millennial to baby boomer. And so I was asked, well, do the baby boomers trust you because, you're the same age as them, so they get you, and because you have this background in psychology? And I go, yeah, they trust me because of my age and because of my psychology background, sure. And they said, well, what about millennials? Why do they trust you? And I said, because I'm a millennial. And they're like, no, you're not. And I said, yeah, I am, because it's a category based on age, but it's also a category based on mindset. Yes. So I'm entrepreneurial. That's very millennial. If you're trying to keep millennials in your company and you haven't set up an entrepreneurial process inside of your organization, which is a place where people who are your employees can think and operate like an entrepreneur and add value to your company, then they're going to leave you. But they'll stay much longer if there's a way for them to be part of the company and part of the ideas. So I am, in fact, much more millennial than I am baby boomer in my mindset. And part of the thing, as I said, the reason I'm hired, the reason people bring us in, is to help them develop the purpose of their company and develop the purpose of the individuals, not develop, but elicit the purpose of the individuals inside of that company. Meaningful work. Well, as I said, that's a prime focus for millennials, and it's a prime focus for me as a human being. So I'm both millennial and boomer. Millennial in mindset, boomer in age.
I used to say you can be young once, but you can be immature forever. And that's where it rolls.
Yeah, I think I remember that from growing up in Salford.
Tell me, we're coming to the end of the show. There's a couple of things I want to ask you. One, tell people where they can find you. Let's know about your book, where they can purchase the book, and give us all that information.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. The central place to find anything about me is fullmontyleadership.com. Like the movie Full Monty, fullmontyleadership.com. You can find me there. You can find access to all of our stuff. I write for Entrepreneur Magazine. I write for Thrive Global, which is Arianna Huffington's outlet, and a bunch of other outlets, 12 different outlets. I have a podcast that you can find on iTunes, Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. It's the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 listeners. You can also find me on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, Dov Baron, Full Monty Leadership, over 400 packed videos on there.
Brilliant videos. Brilliant, absolutely.
And of course, my books you can find on the usual outlets, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. There's a brand new ebook just come out on Barnes and Noble, on the Nook, and on Amazon, and on iBooks too, and that is Authentic Leadership in Action. So all those kinds of outlets you can find us, and really if you just Google DOV Baron, Dov Baron, you'll find me all over this place. And here's the deal: if you want to reach out to me, I do things that other people think I'm crazy for, and that is I'm going to give you my personal email. And I'm going to tell you why before I do. Joseph and I previously chatted. We're on different timelines. He has to take the time. This is not his usual time to record. He took the time to make this happen. He brings you guests from around the world who are at the top of their game, who are here to serve you and add value to you. Do not take that for granted. Please. If you've learned anything from me, if you haven't, that's okay. I'm sorry if I wasted your time. But if you have, please put it in action. If you've learned anything from any of Joseph's guests, put it in action.
Definitely.
But also, here's what's important. The guy puts the time, the energy, and the effort into this. So please write to him. Go to his show on iTunes, rate it, review it, write a review, tell him what you liked about the show. Write to him personally and tell him what you got out of the show. And you can write to me. You can write to me and tell me what you got out of the show. You can write to me if you want to talk to me and find out maybe we can work together, or maybe there's something I can be of service to you. My personal email is Dov, D-O-V, at DOVBARON.com. So Dov at dovbaron.com. Write to me. Tell me what you got out of this. If it inspired you, what are you going to do? What is the action you're going to take? And if there's some way I can help you, I'm happy to do that. If not, and you just want to tell me what you got out of it, that would be great. So you can reach out to me personally there. And again, you can find out anything you want to find out about me at fullmontyleadership.com.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate you having me on.
There is.
Thank you for taking the time and allowing me to do this with you at a time that is not your convenient time. And I sincerely appreciate that.
I have 3 quick questions for you. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
Best business advice you've ever received?
1989, I met Tony Robbins. We were having a conversation. And he said to me, how did you enjoy the event that he had just put on? And I said, it was fabulous. He said, how do you feel? And I said, pissed off. And he said, why? I said, because I'm at least as good as you and you made $11 million and I'm standing in a secondhand jacket. And he said, who's on your team? And I said, I don't play soccer anymore. And he said, get a team. It took me 11 years to learn that lesson, but he was absolutely right. Best business advice, get a team. Anybody who thinks they can do it alone is on crack. You can't.
Brilliant. Book. I know you've got your own book, but what business book would you recommend for someone to read apart from your own?
Good question. I think Good to Great is a fantastic book I would highly recommend for business leaders. But for leadership, the book I would recommend is The Road Less Traveled, an old book from the 1980s, M. Scott Peck. And it's really about creating the level of awareness you need to lead today.
Excellent. The
Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck.
And we're going to play out with your favourite song. Give me that song and tell me why.
One Eskimo, Amazing, is the name of the song. Because my primary belief, this is my central belief, is you were born whole, complete, and miraculous. There's nothing wrong with you. You may have collected some crap along the way, but who you are is perfect. Who you are is amazing. That's brilliant. Dov, it has been a pleasure having you on. I'm sure we'll have conversations along the way for the next many years. Great. Best of luck. Thank you. I'm honoured to have been a guest. Thank you.
Sweet, do you feel sweet? It's amazing. I have no skin and I feel everything. It's amazing. I feel good when you feel good. I knew I would. It's amazing. I've wanted this for so long. Now the deed has been done. We shall rise with the sun. Spend our time as one. Now there is no sin in anything. It's amazing. I hope you do too, 'cause I love everything. It's all amazing. I feel new. Do you feel new? I understand when they say we're born again, 'cause I've been born again. I'm born again. And it's amazing. It's the best thing. It's glorious. It's life-changing. This feeling is amazing. It's the best thing. It's glorious. It's life-changing. This feeling.
This show was sponsored by Harris Myers, your sales and marketing agency, helping you develop a better sales and marketing pipeline.